Everyone, welcome to another broadcast of the Point of Sale Data Minute here live on LinkedIn. Joining me today for our top 5 point of sale data challenges is my colleague from Crunchbox, Vice President of Business Development, Ryan Smits.
Good
Ryan,
afternoon.
thanks for joining.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Of course it is. All right. So today we're going to talk about the top 5 point of sale data challenges. And just for context, Ryan and I work for Crunchbox. Crunchbox sponsors a point of sale data study every year. That data study, or really retail trend study, goes out to hundreds of suppliers. And this year we heard back from over 400 people. And they gave us their thoughts on several topics. And one of those is their point of sale data challenges, which we're going to recap today. Big news, Ryan. I don't even know if you know yet, but the actual 2023 report's being released today. So at the end of this, people will be able to go onto the crunchbox.com website and download the report.
Yep, I got the inside scoop last night.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the top 5. We're going to talk a little bit about the results this year. We're going to compare them to the last 4 years. This is our 4th year of doing the study, and Brian and I share some stories as over the last 4 or 5 years of working together, we've talked to 500 plus retail suppliers, everyone who's using kind of pen and paper to look at what they sell out to those that have very robust analytic teams. And we'll talk about some of the differences and why they would have challenges managing their point of sale data or finding insights in there. And we'll look into that. So I'm going to share my screen on the deck that we have today. I go in there and I'll make it a full screen so everyone can see that. Ryan, tell me if we're good to go from your view there.
Yep, looks good to me.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Let's get into our top 5 point of sale data challenges. And just for a little context, like I said, 4 years of the study, we're going to compare responses over the last 4 years. It's a global study only for retail suppliers, and each year we get 400 to 500 responses. So more than large enough sample size to get a really good analysis of what's happening. So moving along here, what we're going to look at is, just for context, what respondents believe about their point of sale data and leveraging that point of sale data. And 53% of respondents believe that their buyers are increasingly receptive to ideas and recommendations based on their point of sale data analysis. And 58% believe retailer expectations are increasing in terms of how you would leverage their point of sale data. That's down from 60% last year, but fairly consistent. And the 53 is up from 51. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the numbers here? Anything surprising?
There's nothing that's too much surprising about those changes. That's kind of within the margin of error, right? Like 2 or 3% isn't a massive swing. But what these two numbers tell me every single time I look at them, every single year, is that buyers are becoming increasingly receptive to ideas and recommendations, from point of sale analysis, and their expectations are increasing. So basically, what it's saying to me is, they are listening to suppliers, but they're only listening to suppliers who have something useful to say. If you don't go in there with something that's useful, if you don't go in there with a point of sale, something about your point of sales data that's different or useful or actionable, or put some number against it, they're not going to listen to you. And that's where the expectation comes from. You have to have numbers to back up what you're saying.
And what is the number one complaint we hear from all the retail suppliers we've talked to over the years?
Yeah, it's my retailer doesn't listen to me. Which,
and what do we usually say?
Yeah, come to them with something that they want to listen to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this sets up the context for today, in the sense that suppliers are being asked more frequently by their retailers to use the point of sale data that they've made available to them. And their expectations are increasing in terms of how you leverage that data, what insights you can come to them with that help both you and the retailer increase their sales. And on that note, when asked if their teams could make better use of their retailers' point of sale data, 90% said yes. Again, anything surprising there, Ryan?
I think it does show an industry that's willing to improve. I mean, I think if you asked anyone, is there something you could do today to improve in your job? And if you were honest with yourself, 90% of people would probably say yes. The other 10% you probably don't want to work with. There's always way for improvement. And I think that's what's showing in retail. So, if you're thinking about this from your perspective, your competitors are also looking for ways to improve. So when everyone's saying that, yeah, we could do this better, there's obviously something moving out there and something changing that you need to keep on top of.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also says to me that they're trying to use their point of sale data, but it's not really that easy. And finding insights from a pivot table or an Excel, just a simple Excel sheet, or even robust BI tools, it's still challenging to make the best use of that data. And also maybe they're thinking about it like in a timely fashion, because we know many companies are delayed trying to combine all this data together into something useful for their sales, marketing, and product teams each week.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to count down from number 5 to number 1, keep everyone on the edge of their seat. So this year, 2023, what the folks told us in the supplier community is that managing all the different file formats into one consolidated file is their 5th most data challenge of the year. What I think about this is it is hard. And it's never that easy, because it's not just managing the different file formats, it's also when those file formats change all the time. It is really challenging to keep bringing that data into a BI tool, into like Power BI, Tableau, along those lines, or just even into an Excel file, because the headers are different, the descriptions are all different, the product numbers are different. Sometimes you're getting EDI data, and just managing all that into one consolidated file is quite challenging.
Yeah, and I have a story about this it was with a client. This was about 2 or 3 years ago, but the challenge is still the same. There's a particular retailer, and I won't name names, but they're not the best at supplying point of sales information. They've got a whole bunch of systems all over the place, and the data can come in one of three formats. Uh, for this particular supplier, our customer, they were saying, look, we get two of our vendor codes coming out of these two portals, but we don't know what's happening to our third vendor code. They weren't aware that there was actually a third way that data could be provided to them through a SharePoint-based system, and we were able to show them that there's actually a third file format that you need to get, and we were able to consolidate all three vendor codes. But that data discovery aside, that piece is challenging. Having to pull together three different formats every week from three different systems, it's not easy. It's a full-time job doing that stuff. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's the time delay in bringing all this data together, and managing your product master file or your store master file along with this data so that you can actually give your team something insightful is just another layer to the complexity of it all. I know I looked this week at a customer's data because descriptions were missing, and I'm like, did we miss that, or was it not in the file? And when you get an EDI file from some of the retailers, they don't even give you a description. So you got to do a lot of VLOOKUPs, a lot of merging of data. It can be quite challenging.
yeah,
So this is
exactly.
this is one that appears most years. All right, moving on to number 4. Now it's figuring out what to focus on each week. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, this one. This one's a little bit hard because it's a moving target. I think when people get into, the one thing that I always get asked for is just give me a dashboard that shows me everything. And you can do that, but what it's going to show you is it's going to show you everything for this particular point in time. And I think the last 2 years are probably a really good example of that. 3 years ago, what everyone was concerned with was making sure that they didn't have too much inventory in their retailers, making sure that they weren't overstocked and the retailer wasn't going to come back to them for rebates. Then obviously COVID hit, and everyone was concerned about sales slowing down at the start of COVID, if you remember back to that. And then it turns out sales didn't slow down, they actually increased. So now everyone was looking for, where are the stock shortages? So figuring out what to focus on is a little bit of a moving target, but the only way that you're going to figure that out is to be on top of your data. So,
And I think we chatted a little bit about this earlier this week with one of our partners. And the challenging thing, whether you're using tools like Power BI or Tableau, or it's just an Excel sheet, it is really tough unless you have a fantastic analyst as a salesperson to figure out what is it that this data is telling me that I need to go fix that'll make my business better this week. It's like finding a diamond in the rough. You really got to know what you're looking for. And whether, to your point, that's fixing like out of stock issues or phantom inventory issues or what I call stuck stock, top stock, where stores have lots of inventory, but you're not getting any sales because it's sitting out back in their part of the warehouse, or it's 20 feet up in the sky, so to speak, on a third shelf at a Home Depot. It's just not on the shelf for the consumer to buy. But without that data, man, you're just flying blind, and you're just relying on your sellout data to figure out what you should do next. And it's kind of archaic to think that way. You should probably go stand by the fax machine and wait for the next order to come in, because the data's there, the retailer wants you to use it, and you just need to figure out, with the support of your analyst, kind of what data you need to see, how it needs to be presented, so that each week you have some really great ideas and concepts that you can continue to build on in terms of what you're going to work on.
And if you are really stuck for kind of what do we focus on, as a salesperson, I always find it's best to work back from your customer. So obviously you're dealing with a merchant or a buyer or a planner uh, at a retailer, and if you understand, what are their KPIs? Are they coming to the end of quarter and they're really focused on inventory right now because they want to make their books look better? Are they competing with another retailer where that retailer is outselling them? How do we increase sales? So understanding their problems and their KPIs will give you a good direction, at least to start with, on what to focus on.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. If you think about Target and Walmart and others that canceled orders in the fall because they were overstocked, what you probably wanted to focus on then is still just sending some orders in to fill the gaps. And if you could use your data to show them, yeah, you have a lot of inventory, but these group of stores are under inventoried, and we're going to lose X business if we don't even send this small order, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. All right, on to number 3. This kind of follows what you were just saying, right? Is really getting aligned with your retail buyer and then giving them something that they can action that isn't going to require a lot of thinking. Just getting someone to put an order through, using some logic behind that, using their point of sale data as your reference point as to why they need to place this order, really helps create a narrative and an action at the end that can help grow both businesses.
Yeah, and part of the skill in sales is translating, your internal language into the retailer's language, right? So it's essentially what you're doing here is if they call they call it sell through and you call it something else, align with their language on it. Make sure that you're talking to what they're talking to, that they can look at the numbers and they can understand exactly what they mean straight away.
I think this really ties back to your comment about being aligned with your individual retailer KPIs and what they're trying to achieve. As we know, that's a bit of a moving target, but if you can figure that out or have a conversation with that buyer, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour that you get each month, it's great to align your reporting, your talk track, your narrative of what you want them to do to their goals, and with the actions that'll help get them there. Because remember, these buyers and merchants, they're working with thousands of products. They don't have the time to dig deep into your product sales and figure out for themselves, hey, this is what I need to do next. That's why they're more reliant on suppliers to come to them with these valued insights that'll help them get there.
It's also, it's also important to give that buyer something that they can take back to the buying committee to present, because when you're selling to your buyer, you're almost helping that buyer sell your product internally or your solution internally. So, you're arming them with the information that's going to make it most likely for your point of view or your idea to get across, and
Yeah.
that's where this comes in.
Yeah, and I agree. And at no point do we think this is easy. We don't think
No.
the buyers are just going to go like, "Hey, yeah, you're right, Ryan. Thanks for pointing that out. Send that order over, and I'll get it entered. You get, here's your EDI transmission." We don't think it's easy, but it's certainly easier if you are able to tell a story based on the data that the retailers provided. And some retailers are certainly more open than others. It really depends on your relationship with the buying, the merchant, the entire team there, as to what you can get them to do. But at the end of the day, everyone's interested in growing sales, higher inventory turns, better return on inventory capital, all those metrics that'll help drive everyone's business forward. And without presenting that data in an actionable format, it's an uphill battle. All right, getting down close to number one. Number two, defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks.
It's always high. This one doesn't surprise me that it's number one or two. It's normally up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the interesting thing is over the last 2 years, I think this has become more important. Uh, as supply chains have struggled, out of stocks have become more visible and more top of mind. Previously, it was an issue, but it wasn't the number one concern. So that it doesn't surprise me that this one's up there.
Yeah, with the whole supply chain challenges during the pandemic period, this one catapulted to number one over the years, trying to figure out, by not having this product in stock, what is it costing me? Also, I think when the retailer, put the hold on purchasing, understanding what stores were out of stock, because we always know top selling stores and top selling products are the ones that drive out of stocks, but understanding how many times a year that product store combination is out of stock and what does that cost you as a supplier and as a retailer by not having that product in stock, that's where the calculation becomes really valuable. And then it's not just buying your product or your product out of stock. It's, what is it costing the retailer from a basket size? Because if I'm going in to buy a sheet of drywall, for instance, and you don't have it, I'm probably not buying the muck that goes with it, the trowel, the sandpaper, et cetera, right? So it's really important to understand the value of lost sales due to out of stocks. And it is, to your point, one that is on the top of the list each year.
Yeah, and I think I'm hearing some customers in my back ear saying, the retailer won't listen to me if I show them out of stocks, which I'll address up front. It's they're not going to listen to you every time, right? Like you're never going to get that. I mean, my wife doesn't listen to me every time. It's the way the world goes. Um, it's so to expect your buyer to listen to every single suggestion, it's unreasonable. But what you can do to make it more likely that they're going to listen to you is put a dollar value against it. It's no good saying, uh, we've got 100 stores that are out of stock right now, because what does that actually mean? You've got to say we've got 100 stores that are out of stock right now. These stores are selling an average of 10 units a week, and it's 10 units a week times 100 stores times the $10 margin that you're getting in each of those products. That's the value of this problem, and if we can fix it, we're going to add that to your bottom line, and that's how you're going to meet your KPIs at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, and I think as a supplier, it's an important number to know, right? Because
Yeah.
you're typically manufacturing or you're ordering. You're doing one or the other. And someone needs to, someone's looking at how much investment they have in inventory at any given time. May be strapped for inventory capital, but you want to know, where have I been short last year and what did it cost me? Right? So whether it's you didn't order enough or the supply chain just wasn't able to deliver enough, you do want to have a good idea of what the full potential of sales was for your business so you can best manage that going forward from a cash resource standpoint, also from a human resource standpoint, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to count down. We're almost at number one. So number one for 2023 on the edge of your seat is analyzing sales performance across different retailers. This one makes me smile because it's probably the easiest thing that we solve in our day-to-day work. And after talking to 400 suppliers over the last 5-6 years, it's the easiest one to solve, but it still comes up as number one in our data challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a little bit of around this data. There's a little bit of stasis, I guess. There's a little bit of this is the way we've always done it with an Excel spreadsheet, and combining things in Excel is actually quite difficult, and it's quite difficult to do that in a timely fashion. But yeah, if you can do it using a server or even some of our products, it does really help because I'm just thinking of Bed Bath and Beyond at the moment with all the troubles they're going through. A lot of our clients and it's not an open secret, but they haven't been doing bad. They haven't been doing well, and a lot of our clients have been able to identify that. But they've also been able to identify stores within that network that are doing well, and so they're able to focus on those. And if you're not able to compare um, sales performance across different retailers, you'd never understand that. Hey, this Bed Bath and Beyond store in this location, it's close to a Macy's, it's close to a Lowe's, it's close to a Williams Sonoma, and it's actually doing really well compared to all of those. So maybe it's worth actually focusing on those stores a little bit.
And I think where it gets hard too is where the product numbers are all different. It's hard to bring in the product data, and all the retailers report their sales by store, by product. You may want to look at it by product, by store, by product, by region, just product by retailer. The product team's always very focused on how are my products performing across all my retailers. Maybe in there you'll find a nugget of gold that shows that there's an opportunity to take Target, a new product that you have in Walmart that's doing well, and explain to them that they're missing out on some lost sales, and increase your lineup over there a little bit. There's so many different aspects by understanding performance across multiple retailers that really help a business. The marketing department would want to know, if I ran a promotion at Lowe's this weekend, did I grow my market share? Did I just cannibalize sales at Menards and Home Depot, for instance? It is challenging because it comes back to data challenge number 5 that we led off with, which is just managing all the different data formats. This is really an offshoot of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the thing is, we can solve this problem very easily. It's not that complicated for us to solve. But the great thing about it is, if you can solve this problem, you can do some really interesting stuff with the data that you then get, because you can you can figure out if you're cannibalizing the market. You can figure out, is there a demographic in the country that buys my product more than others? Is there an underserved demographic? Say for example that your product is bought by people who have middle income between the ages of 40 and 60. Are there any pockets of the country that you're missing out on that market? All those kinds of things. But without it all being together, you'll never understand that. You'll never be able to figure that out.
Yeah, certainly, like looking at sales by state or by region or weather patterns or all those things. You need to be able to bring all your retailer data together to really give you an idea of what's happening. You can't just look at one retailer in isolation and try and make business decisions based on a very small sample set of what's actually going on in the market with your product. One of the things I wanted to do, so we've counted down the 5 data challenges for 2023. What I thought would be interesting to do is look at how these have changed since we started the study back in 2020. So we have 4 sample sets here, and you'll see how they rack and stack once I get what's going here. So in 2020, this is going to be hard to see, I think, just based on where the bubbles are in our presentation here today. But you'll see 1, 2, and 3 in 2020 are exactly the same 1, 2, and 3 in 2023. And if there's one thing I think we'll both agree on, which we agree on many things, the supplier community is fairly slow moving when it comes to the adoption of technology. There's a lot of companies out there using Power BI right now. A lot of suppliers are implementing Power BI. But even then, they still really struggle to get any value out of it because they're not sure what to do with it once they get it. Yeah. So if we look back at 2020, the top 5 in 2023 are there. There's just a slight change from figuring out what to focus on each week was number 5, and managing all the different file formats into one consolidated file was number 4. Right? So presenting the specific recommendations came in at 3, defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks was in at number 2, and analyzing sales performance across different retailers was in at number 1. So we move along to 2021. What happened? Well, not a lot. But what we saw was getting visibility of sales by channel made its way into the top 5. This wasn't surprising, just kind of due to the pandemic and the different purchasing patterns that needed to happen as stores were opened and closed throughout that period.
And a lot of stores started accelerating the buy online, pick up in store programs, right? It existed before, but it wasn't as big and it wasn't as expensive. So once that started happening, people wanted to understand how people were interacting with their products. So yeah, not too surprising.
And at some point, the retailers' hands were tied a little bit. I think just based on, only a selection of their stores were open, wasn't business as usual. So you see that the one that dropped off this list, presenting specific recommendations back to the retail buyer in an actionable format, it just disappeared. But it went down to number 6. But I could see why. It wasn't business as usual,
Yeah.
and getting the visibility of sales by channel now became key. Because if you started to do more e-com channel and buy online, pick up in store, it led to you thinking different about your product. Because you could, typically people will buy more online, so they'll buy the 10-pack instead of the 4-pack because they don't, if it's heavy, they don't need to carry 10 to the car, right? It's like buying dog food. You're more likely to buy a 50-pound bag that's getting delivered to your house and maybe buying a 50-pound bag at PetSmart for your dog. So you could look at packaging. You could change your format, change your size, a little bit of a different way of thinking in the business as the channel changed.
Yeah.
All right, and then looking at 2022, which is coming out of the pandemic period, you'll see that again, only 6 data challenges have ever made the top 5 list. So as things are getting back to normal, you see that getting visibility of sales by channel became less of a priority. It went from 3 to 4, figuring out what to focus on each week, jump back up into 3. The buyer became a little bit more involved in the business and came back in at number 5. But still, we're hanging there because there are still those supply chain challenges with defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks. That
Yeah, and
came back in at number 1.
I think that that shows you what was going on in the supply chain during 2022. Um, you know, defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks became top of mind for everyone.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't important before; it's just that year that was the problem that everyone was having, especially in the first 2 quarters.
Yeah. And if you look at this over the last 4 years, to your point earlier, analyzing sales performance across different retailers and defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks have always been number 1 or number 2. Yet again, it's something we can easily solve. It's a little harder to do when you're building Power BI and Tableau, but the data is there to do it. And as we were chatting again earlier in the week, you just need an analyst that knows how to use those tools, how to bring the data in, and how to best turn the data into a story that can be easily consumed by their audience, whether it's supply chain, whether it's salespeople, the marketing team, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and we have all these dashboards pre-built as well. Like we can define the value of lost sales due to out of stocks with our dashboards, and obviously analyze sales performance across different retailers. That's all that's all in our dashboard suite. But with the more self-serve model now, sometimes we need to feed the data to an
Yeah.
analyst who needs to do that. So it just depends on your business. But if you don't know how to do it, we can definitely help.
Yeah, and I think the first one, it makes me shake my head a little bit that it still hangs in there at number 1 or number 2 every week. You would think that us and other folks in this industry that can help retail suppliers, really understand the performance across different retailers would be chipping away at it at a fantastic rate, right? But we still know that, to your point, it's hard to get these suppliers to move, and we're stuck with this is the way we've always done it, and it works. But they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they're missing, because the same point of sale data challenges keep coming up every single year. When we could wipe these all out, the data challenge would be, I think, like taking the data that we have, looking at all the information, and then marrying that up to what the retailer is trying to achieve. So you need to have that retailer insight to really make best use of your point of sale data. Well, that wraps up our top 5 point of sale data challenges for today. They haven't changed much. It's the same 6 over the last 4 years. Surprising, possibly, but as I said earlier, the supplier community is fairly slow on the adoption of technology that can help solve a lot of those challenges. I want to let you know that as Ryan and I said, our 2023 Retail Trends and Disruption Report is out today. You can visit crunchbox.com over the next 24 hours to download your copy. So one of the topics in there is point of sale data challenges. So I just took that out for today's podcast and live event here on LinkedIn. There are other great sections in there about supply chain, price changes, shrinkflation. It's a really great read. So I encourage you to come to our website and download a copy. And then on that note, if you have any questions for either Ryan or I, you can email us at dmerlis@crunchbox.com and rsmits@crunchbox.com. And of course, you can always watch or listen to this broadcast again on LinkedIn, on the Point of Sale Data Guy YouTube channel, or on several of your favorite podcast apps. So Ryan, thanks for hanging out with me today. Appreciate it. Look forward to our next one. We'll do maybe one of these a month. We'll take a section out of our retail study and turn it into some good content that we can chat about here on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Well, again, thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for watching. Look forward to coming back at you in a couple of weeks from next week. Ryan and I are going to be at the hardware show in Vegas, where we'll do a little LinkedIn Live. I've had several suppliers who aren't going to the show this year held back, want to know what the hardware show is like. We'll be at the kitchen and bath show. Later next month, we'll be at the housewares show. We're going to be traveling all over the place shortly. And then I think we'll do a couple more of these LinkedIn Lives and podcasts and share some more excellent content. Thanks for your insights.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
all right. We'll catch you later. See ya.
Bye-bye.